After Aaron's suicide, I wanted to know what happened because he gave us no indication that he was suicidal. And I look back and I'm like, why didn't I look at CTE?
Chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE. CTE can cause aggression, dementia, and mood swings. Some say that may explain Hernandez's behavior.
He's a football player. This is a known issue with football players. We immediately wanted to see if he, in fact, did have CTE. And it wasn't until we got the CTE results that we realized not only that he had it, but how bad he had it. After Aaron's suicide, we immediately wanted to see if he, in fact, did have CTE.
For an individual who was only 27 at the time that he died, he's clearly at the severe end of the spectrum, especially in the frontal lobes, which are very important for decision-making, judgment, and cognition. This would be the first case we've ever seen of that kind of damage in such a young individual.
Aaron had one of the most severe cases of CTE of anyone examined to date for a person of his age.
I wasn't surprised because I remember he would always tell me about how he hated contact with his head. And he's like, man, I get these crazy headaches. You know, our brains are not built for car crashes every day.
I think that Aaron's behavior may be completely consistent with the condition of his brain.
I think there were multiple signs of CTE in Aaron's background. I think Aaron tried to bottle it up inside as he was fighting what he couldn't really understand was happening to him. If the defense was aware of Aaron's CTE condition in the Odin Lloyd trial, this would have further mitigated and completely absolved any legal responsibility for Aaron. That would have clearly won the trial.
Dahmer avoids jail time. Instead, he's given work release and mandatory time with a mental health professional. Another close call, another opportunity where he could have been stopped, and once again, he acts remorseful. He writes to the judge, "What I did was deplorable. The world has enough misery in it without my adding more to it. Sir, I can assure you that it will never happen again." We now know nothing could be further from the truth.
He would go see a psychiatrist and not say a word for 10 sessions, and they'd let him walk out the door. Probation officer, you'd say, you have these feelings of, sexual perversion and all that. He says, no, I read books and masturbate to that. He's out there killing people.
I've often wondered why I haven't had more dreams or nightmares about what I've done. For some reason, it's like it's blocked off from part of my mind. If I dwelled on the subject all the time, I wouldn't be able to function.
In talking to Jeffrey Dahmer, I realized that one of his most peculiar traits was no matter how well he knew his victims, he didn't view them as people. That's why in his 160-page confession, he could describe everything he did to them in excruciating detail, but he couldn't remember their names.
When you killed these men, afterwards, were you repulsed? Were you upset?
No, at the time, it was almost addictive. It was almost a surge of energy. I wouldn't have to worry about any of their needs or anything. I just had complete control of the situation.
The right way to think of him is as having necrophilia. Now, usually we think of necrophilia as being about corpses. I think it's more than that. I think it is control over the completely passive, compliant partner that he could fondle, hug, touch, and lie with as long as possible.
From 1993 to 2002, Aileen Wuornos' legal team files dozens of appeals, which are repeatedly denied.
Because of all the media attention, you had to take into factor it's going to affect the judge who might rule on your motions. You know, there's the court of public opinion, and you always have to combat an unfavorable media narrative.
I've been in a lot of death rows over the years, and it is horrific. You're in the cell 23 hours a day, a 6x9. Sometimes you have a window, sometimes you don't. You go mad. And she already had enough problems as it was. After several years on death row, Aileen began to complain about her treatment there in the prison. She thought the guards were poisoning her food. Aileen claimed that the guards were blasting noise in her cell so she couldn't sleep.
I think she was sociopathic and psychotic and psychopathic. She thought that the CIA was in on it. She thought there were transmitters in her food.
The appeals process continues for many years, which is common in a capital murder case. But no one anticipates the surprising twist to come.
It was 2001. Aileen had been on death row for about 8 years. And suddenly, she's back in the news.
I robbed him, and I killed him as cold as ice. And I'd do it again, too. And I know I'd kill another person because I've hated humans for a long time.
Aileen fires her defense team and ends all of her appeals. Now she changes her story and says she killed in cold blood. She volunteered to die.
There's no sense in keeping me alive because I just would absolutely kill again. I've got too much anger, too much hatred in me.
Now she is recanting her original claims that it was all in self-defense. She had just finally given up completely.
She was just done. She said, if I have no chance for anyone to believe me on anything, then just let me go. But I didn't believe that in her heart she really wanted to die.
Attorneys and activists claim Wuornos is mentally ill, too unstable to face the death penalty.
I've been practicing for 44 years, and I was a prosecutor for a number of years. That was the first time I've seen a defendant actually walk in and saying, I want to drop all my appeals. I want to be sentenced. I deserve to be sentenced to death.
Her attorneys argued that Aileen was not fit to make this decision, and she wasn't. But court-appointed psychologists allowed it.
Because what she done, she knew she wasn't going to get out of it, so why prolong it, keep going on it? She wanted to go to heaven. She had me writing everybody, governors and everything, please execute her, in her words, and sending her, mailing her letters for her.
Aileen Wuornos wrote a handwritten 23-page letter to the Florida Supreme Court. Florida Supreme Court treated Ms. Wuornos' letter like a petition for writ of habeas corpus. And that's the legal term for a pleading you would file if you're being housed and there's something wrong with the treatment you're receiving while you're being housed in the prison system. So that's how I got involved with the case. I'm Rag Singhal. I represented Aileen Wuornos in 2002 after she was placed on death row. What Aileen Wuornos wanted was to be executed as soon as possible, but while she was waiting to be executed, she wanted to be treated humanely. Some of her complaints included tampering with her food, people saying certain things for the purpose of agitating her. The way I viewed her claims is that if they were true, then there were some real issues with the treatment of the women on death row by the prison guards. But if they weren't true, then it was evidence of delusional behavior, which means that Aileen Wuornos wasn't competent to be executed.